I'm the one, yeah. I'm the one that ain't morning in the dark. Okay, a good day to everyone and welcome back to day 2 of the 47th ARTDO International Conference, and you are at the Reinvent and Reimagine track. Without taking much time, let me do a quick introduction of our moderator for today, Kun Atip Mongswan. Kun Atip is a senior petroleum earth scientist who has rejuvenated as an executive and currently reinvented himself as a success and executive coach. He owns his own Facebook page, Atip Success Coach, and he's based currently in Bangkok, Thailand. You can reach him via his email, atipm@hotmail.com. Without much further ado, let me pass the time over to Kun Atip.
Welcome all speakers and participants to our Reinvent and Reimagine track. Let me begin with a key question. What have you done lately to reinvent and reimagine your lives? Please feel free to type in our chat box in the feed column. While you are typing, let me start off with our first speaker, Dr. Nikita Achirakor. Dr. Nikita is a Ghanaian academic, cultural entrepreneur, researcher, and writer based in Germany. Her creative works focus on the intersections between women's health, trauma, language, and belonging. Her award-winning documentary on women's reproductive health has screened at various film festivals in the USA, Ghana, and Germany. She is the founder of Write Ghana literary initiatives, which documents and preserves Ghanaian literature. Dr. Nikita's talk title is Reimagine Culture Post-COVID-19. Reimagine Culture Post-COVID-19. Let's welcome Dr. Nikita. Our participants can use the emoticons in the bottom of your screen to welcome Dr. Nikita as well. Dr. Nikita, when you are ready, you can begin your talk.
Thank you. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see you, Dr. Nikita.
Perfect. So today I would like to have a very, very short presentation and talk about how we can look at culture beyond COVID-19. I think that COVID has really shown us how much our lives have become intertwined with the digital space. If you think of the fact that we are ordering groceries from apps on our phone to the way in which we are tracing the virus with these apps, the way in which we are using video conferencing like Zoom to connect with our families and with our friends, to celebrate our birthdays virtually, to start new hobbies socially and virtually. So my question then is, what does this mean for the cultural sector, for the arts, for the creative sector, as a kind of business practice, so in terms of money, as a cultural heritage, and also as an everyday practice? I'm posting that the relationship between culture and COVID has become very important because of the digital sector. If we think about it, we have galleries, cinemas, all these cultural activities are shutting down. But at the same time, with the rise in use of, for instance, Netflix, more people are using Netflix, more people are using Disney Plus to watch movies. And all of these movies come from the entertainment sector, from the arts sector. So we can see that the social and the economic contributions of culture have become, in some sense, emphasized during COVID, mostly because of the digital sector. But we live in a world, a very capitalist, neoliberalist world, where the arts are not seen as important, right? So marginalized in favor of more technical skills. And governments and individuals are investing less in creative arts and less in the creative industries. In some countries, completely cut out of curriculums for children learning in schools. So we are leaving out a very liberal, soft skill, creative-minded approach to critical thinking. But the arts in this year have highlighted how beneficial they are to our lives. So what I would like to look at is what kind of transformations have happened to the cultural sector, and what does this mean for the cultural sector going beyond COVID? I like to focus a lot on Africa here because the transformations that we see is very important because it's highlighting the ways in which citizens are using art to re-emphasize the way in which they belong to their countries, and also using this to preserve and produce and reconstruct their national and continental heritage. So what kind of cultural practices are being reinvented? In this example, we can see an example of the way in which people are using the digital space to reconstruct history in the present. So The Stayed and the Stoning is a project which is an interactive, immersive, virtual reality experience of slavery. So basically in this project, what they do is to use VR to immerse people in the experience of slavery. They do this through the pictures here, which are pictures of what we call the Cape Coast Castle, which is one of the many castles which are on the coastline of Ghana, which were created during the slave experience, so during the transatlantic slave trade. And what this project does with VR is to allow people who are distant from the experience of the slave trade to experience and to re-immerse themselves in it, to ensure that this experience of slavery is not forgotten, which is very important now because we have, even with COVID, there have been a lot of examples of not necessarily slavery, but more and more people being stuck in slave-like conditions. So this project uses the VR to re-emphasize what kind of society we want to get away from. Another example here is the African Digital Heritage, which is from Kenya, which basically maps and archives African material heritage. So some of their projects include the Save the Railway project, which tries to document old railway stations which are no longer in use and are at the risk of demolition. So they have included about 1,000 plus photographs, about 50 railway stations, and they feed these into an interactive map, and which includes accompanying stories by people who have used the railway and remember the railway. Then they make 3D reconstructions of the railway to see what they used to look like, and use this to teach in schools and in workshops people about the importance of archiving the material parts of our culture. Another example here is with tourism, which in this case is not just about heritage, but also about the economic value, which for most governments, this is really important, the economic part of it. So in Rwanda, for instance, the company Kigali 360. Now, Rwanda is known as the land of 1,000 hills because it has a very mountainous, scenic view. And in the past few years, they embarked on a tourism campaign to invite more tourists. So, for instance, they're really famed for their gorilla parks where you can go and you can, see gorillas and be with the gorillas. But COVID-19 reduced tourism, completely eliminated it. Now, Kigali 360 used this and use the digital space to use VR, so virtual reality headsets, to give 360 tours of Kigali. So you can be in Malaysia or wherever and use the VR, and you can be in Kigali. You can be with the gorillas. You can be with the mountains. So they give a kind of interactive digital tourism of Kigali, which has helped to sort of revive the cultural tourist space. Also, you can see here Asilia Safaris, which gives immersive virtual safaris. Safari being a very popular tourist activity for people who go there. So I just give a short video. You can see, for instance, here, not just through the VR, because this is not the VR, but this is just a short clip. You can see the elephants here in Kenya just lounging around, trying to go to the water hole to get some water. If we move on, there's also fashion. So another category here, where in Congo, we have the fashion label Hanifa, which used during the COVID times, used a fashion show, a virtual fashion show, where people are constantly turned onto their phones. So here we see that technology is not just a kind of platform to show something, but actually transforming the entire design process and the clothes themselves. Because rather than using models, they use 3D figures to create the garments and to show the garments on different kinds of body shapes and body types. So we can see here, for instance, and this is very important because coming from Congo, what they did was to use also in these videos to highlight the plight of the Congolese when it comes to the material cobalt, which is used in most phones, which is a very modern type of slavery in Congo, where lots of children are stuck in the mines mining for cobalt. So this using 3D and using this digital space, they were able to transform the entire fashion show. And this, I must mention, is the first ever virtual fashion show using 3D. So this, of course, lets them reach a wider audience that they will not get with the physical shows. The last example I would like to give is with my company, Right Ghana, where Africa has about 2,000 living languages. So these are languages that are actively in use. But languages like English, French, and Portuguese, Arabic are, of course, more used predominantly across countries because Africa has the most multilingual speakers in the world. And languages like Hausa, Swahili, these are indigenous languages which also cut across countries. So smaller languages are being lost and are dying out because parents are choosing to speak bigger languages like English, Arabic with their children. And so the smaller indigenous languages are being rapidly lost. So what digitalization has helped me in this case is to preserve these indigenous languages and also to make them available to people in the diaspora. So people who live in the US, in the UK, who don't have easy access to these languages. So my work is using the digital space to preserve these languages and to document them. Because what is necessary to remember is that what is on the internet is what we put on the internet. So when we begin to type indigenous languages, when we translate existing pages into different languages, or we document literature, we start to transform the digital space from a kind of singular monolingual space of fewer languages, which are dominated by languages like English, for instance. And we start to push indigenous languages and make them more available. And we begin to make them as living languages. So we preserve them. So my final statement is that what can digitalization do for cultural practices, particularly post-COVID? What is clear is that technology and digitalization have become even more intertwined with culture. So we can no longer speak of a kind of distinction between tech and culture. These two are feeding into each other. So it will lead to more efforts in collective ownership of cultural practices. So people begin to privately reconstruct and retell their own stories and their own everyday experiences and history. But this has a huge economic impact also. Because for instance, with tourism, whereas the lockdown and reduced travel impacted tourism. Now with tech, we can integrate digitalization and we can transform tourism. We can transform the fashion sector. So we can remove this aspect of distance and still allow for economic growth, which is in Africa is very necessary without these negative impacts that we get. So post-COVID, how are we reimagining culture? I suggest that technology and digitalization have become, in fact, so important to digitalization and to cultural practices that this is the way forward for cultural practices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nikita, for sharing your vision of our culture post COVID-19. That's very exciting, yeah, and very insightful indeed. We will see you again in the Q&A session in the last 15 minutes of our track. So please allow me to move on to our next speaker, Miss Lisa Young. Miss Lisa is the chief sense maker of Y Studios in San Francisco, USA. She is a cultural translator with extensive insights on crafting the vision of the new business landscape. Ms. Lisa's talk title is Design Outside the Box. Design Outside the Box. Let's welcome Ms. Lisa. You have to unmute. Ms. Lisa, you have to unmute.
Hello. Let me try again. Thank you for the introduction. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone around the world. Thank you for your time in attending this presentation. So let me just quickly go into my share screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
Very
great.
clear.
Okay, so let me just start quickly by briefly introducing Y Studios. We are a design and research consultancy based in San Francisco in the US. A lot of these products may or may not be familiar to some of you. We had the great opportunity being in the Silicon Valley, being in the Bay Area, to work with a wide variety of different types of clients, mainly high-tech clients, of course, a lot of startups. So anything that you hear of these days, you know, from the Google to the Facebook to, you know, all these big global companies now had its humble beginnings in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we're right in the midst of it, in the sense that we are immersed in all the new technology coming up and the different types of business ideas that's coming up as well. So it's really exciting. So we view our partnership with our clients as a design partnership. We work from, you know, with a lot of different types of clients, from Fortune 500 companies to medium-sized companies to just startups and mom and pop. So I think the breadth of it also helps us be curious and flexible in terms of how we find the next innovation or innovative thinking. Because we feel like as designers, we are the interface between the client, the brand, as well as the consumer that's using the product or services. So we essentially become the cultural translator in creating the appropriate message and identity for our clients to address the emerging needs of consumers around the world. Along the way, we're all, of course, happy to pick up a few design awards just to validate a lot of the times, you know, what we strive to do is going along the right path. So let me introduce myself and give you an understanding of my background and where I've come from. So as a chief sense maker, essentially I have the responsibility to help our clients communicate the vision of their business effectively by guiding them to develop appropriate business strategies and design solutions. And since I was a child, I've always had a deep curiosity for understanding people and cultures. I grew up in Singapore. I was born in Singapore. I left home around in my early 20s and went to school in Newcastle, which is a university town in the northeast of England. Shortly after graduation, I used the opportunity to being in Europe to travel and live in a variety of different places, and was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work with a Japanese furniture designer in Milan, Italy, for a while. And then the biggest career move that I did was actually working with Philips Design in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And in that capacity, I've worked from, you know, a product designer to a researcher to project management for a lot of different Philips design projects around the world, not just in the Netherlands, but also in Singapore and Hong Kong. And then that also led me to San Francisco Bay Area eventually. I also had the opportunity to work on the East Coast for a while with Motorola in Boston. But my heart is always in San Francisco, as you know, the song goes, right? I left my heart in San Francisco, where I joined Y Studios, a company that was started by my husband and partner back in the early 2000s. So this is where I'm at right now in terms of, trying to make sense of something to give it meaning. And that is the essence of what sense making is all about. If you were to read into sense making, it's actually a term introduced into organizational studies in the 1970s by a guy called Carl Veck, I think that's how you pronounce it. He's an American organizational theorist. In essence, it's really a process through which people interpret and give meaning to their experiences. And I find this very important in the world that we live in terms of creativity and how we can help navigate, all these uncertainties, especially now through the pandemic that we're all experiencing globally. And how do we get out of this to create something purposeful and meaningful at the end of it? So there are three core elements, if you will, to sense making, which is about exploration, creation, and acting on it. And that fits quite nicely to what we have essentially been doing as part of Y Studios, creating a more holistic view of the world, because we do look at the world holistically. And contextually, we want our research insights to inspire, to inform, and as well as to validate the design process. It is only then that it enables us to understand the market and the consumer before we create meaningful experiences for people to enjoy. So these are just some of the examples of the type of research work that we do. Very high level future thinking, 5 to 10 years out kind of work at what we call a future scoping, to having these consumer or expert interviews and validation interviews with end users that we can actually understand from their candid opinions about what are some of the aspirational or emerging needs that needs to be fulfilled. We feel like there's technology drives a lot of lifestyle trends right now, but it's also important to understand the human being who's using it and how does that fit into our lives. So, which is why we all do these different various types of research to gain that important insight before we actually go to the drawing board to design it. So for my topic, Think Outside the Box, it's really about encouraging our clients, as well as everyone for that matter, to view things from a different perspective in order to inspire imaginative thinking for better problem solving. So it's also thinking about, traditional ways of doing things or things that we are familiar and comfortable with, and then look beyond that a little bit and think outside what are the possibilities. So it's really thinking sideways instead of forward all the time, looking beyond the obvious and seeing things from a different perspective. So what does that mean, actually? How do you think outside the box? It's really three different things, three different buckets that you can see to change your focus and look from a sideways perspective to find answers that are not immediately obvious. And then think about it. Imagine new ways of doing things differently, unhindered by accepted methods or conventional constraints. And then once you understand it, once you think about it, then act on it, do it. identify and then develop useful ideas that fit the situation creatively. So it fits quite nicely into this core elements of sense making in terms of the exploration, the creation, as well as the action on doing things. And how do we do it at Y Studios? Variety of different ways, but for the purpose of this presentation, I think there's three key areas that we always encourage people to make research alive and relevant. So we do what we call cultural immersions, which is really about curated experiences that provide an insider's guide to the city's cultures, so you can understand lifestyle experiences and first-hand encounters with key influences. And then once we have that understanding firsthand, then we move into innovation workshops, where it's really a discussion platform that we can engage with people from all different types of discipline to share research insights, identify opportunity areas, as well as then define some strategies that you can develop as part of the business roadmap. So by experiencing firsthand and then thinking about how to strategize to make it happen, we move into actually doing it, to visualize the experience. What does that mean in terms of ideating some initial design concepts contextually? So you really understand the use environment, the lifestyle environment, the person using it. So you really validate the proof of concept for further development. So in the following slides, I would like to just explain a little bit about my experiences in conducting different types of research activities. So, for example, in the realm of cultural immersions, we work with a variety of different types of clients globally. So for this example, it was with some business executives from Italy. It's a pasta brand, of quite a famous pasta brand based in Italy. They wanted to understand what is the taste of Italian Americans so that they can develop new food products specifically for the US market. So the program allowed them to travel in 3 to 4 key cities in the US. For that project, they came to San Francisco, and then they also went to New York, Atlanta, and I think they also went to Chicago. So just to have an understanding of the different taste profiles of what does that mean to be Italian American versus Italians in Europe, and how do you cater to that sort of taste profile? So for my input on this program, it's really trying to understand food movements that is relevant at that time in terms of how people enjoy food, cook food, and also taking them on first-hand encounters to just grocery stores, ethnic food markets, farmers market, Italian restaurants, any kind of ways that we can bring some of these nuances of taste profiles to the business executives to help them understand this is what Americans like, or this is the potential for what Americans could like with the brand that they are trying to push into the US market. Then we also did cultural immersions for a US company. This client has been around in the battery business, like battery chargers, for over 70, 80 years now. So it's a really old company, and they wanted to inject some fresh blood into trying to understand a new generation of young consumers, the millennials. So this is really about how do you reinvent an old brand to stay relevant for a new generation of consumers. In a similar way, we were tasked to really help them understand what does that mean in terms of a commodity like a product like a battery charger, what place does it have in the new world of using charging and batteries and the devices that needs that sort of capacity, and also trying to help them understand the lifestyle experiences, the lifestyle environments that appeal to millennial consumers. So we took them. They came to San Francisco, so we took them to different places like the WeWork space. Again, the WeWork is a brand that started here in the San Francisco Bay Area. They are definitely one of the brands that changed the way people work, right? From very rigid cubicles to a more, it's almost like a home environment, a very lifestyle driven, very comfortable place that you want to go work in. Then there are also things like Tech Shop, which is really a go-to place where you can make your own things. So it's really targeting at the DIY, the do-it-yourself, the maker culture. If you don't have a workshop at home or at school, you come to this place and you have that community to support you as well. So there's all of these different little things that that creates an environment of understanding for our client to know beyond just the battery charger, in what space in the home as well as in the mobile environment or even in the car environment that potentially a new product or a new line of product that could go into. So it's really making culture as well as lifestyle come alive for them, and they can experience it firsthand. Then with this same client, we moved into innovation workshops where we really look into, okay, we understand the millennials now. We understand the lifestyle space that appeals to them. We understand a lot of these bigger macro movements that drive a lot of these ways of behaviors and using different types of devices like the Internet of Things or smartphones or big data. So how does all this culminate into really understanding where the battery charger space could evolve? And so we went out to talk to 15 different types of consumers that suit that profile. And then we brought all this information to a one-day workshop with the client to really hash out exactly what kind of products that they can develop as a company, a 70-year-old company, going after the 20-something-year-old consumer. Then we also took innovation workshops in a different way to Pune in India. We were invited, I think this was back in 2007 now, a long time ago, to speak at the Pune Design Festival. And as part of the trip, we also had the opportunity to conduct a design workshop with students from 4 design schools in Pune. So it was a really great experience just to be working with students as well as to be immersed in the culture that presents itself during our short trip in India. And we wanted to challenge the students to really understand what does that mean in terms of, identifying opportunities for contextual problem solving that improves their everyday needs. So in the context of Pune, we identified some key industries like automobile, information technology, biotechnology, agriculture, and food processing, and divided these students, there are 40 students in total, into 4 groups, where they tackle 2 issues per group within the 2-hour brainstorm session. So the outcome of it was to really present their ideas like they would to a business environment. So we are the clients, they are the designers, and they have to come up with viable design solutions that will meet that specific industry that they are brainstorming on, and make it happen as the next follow-up. So I think we had a really good time. They enjoyed the topics. They enjoyed working together in a group, and within such a short time, a lot of great ideas came out of it. And we were also, as guests and visitors, we were able to actually appreciate, well, an insider's point of view, if you will, from what do they see as contextual problems that have opportunities for improvement.
Miss Lisa?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. But could you please summarize?
Yes. So this is the last one. So in order to actually understand all these different thoughts and ideas, then we begin to ideate in terms of, understanding, okay, what does this product look like? So for those who have attended another session yesterday, my partner Y's presentation, he brought up these three main creative drivers that drive our thinking within Y Studios: empathy, curiosity, and fluidity. And I think this is really key in terms of, trying to understand and make sense of the world right now, especially with what's happening with the pandemic. Is really to have all these different things in mind. In terms of empathy, it's really designed for others, not for your own ego. And curiosity is really about keeping an open mind and respect differences. Discomfort is a path to new discoveries. And then fluidity, know where you came from and be prepared for a future that will change, as we are experiencing right now. So it's really the main takeaway is to remain curious, flexible, and be kind and be empathetic. So I leave you now with also a quote from Marcel Proust: "The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes." And that's it. We're doing a design doing workshop in January, so join us for further discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lisa, for sharing your extensive insights with us in designing outside the box. We will see you again in the Q&A session.
Thank
At
you.
the end of our track. So let's move on to our next speaker, Dato Syed Mohib. Dato Mohib has more than 40 years of experience in insurance industry. He won special award for Takaful CEO of the Year in 2012. Currently, he sits on the board of Standard Chartered, the Big Bank Malaysia, and the Credit Guarantee Corporation Malaysia. He is passionate about talent development and motorbikes. Dr. Dato Mohib's talk title is Reimagine Beyond 2020. Reimagine Beyond 2020. Let's welcome Dato Mohib.
Thank you very much, Mr. Atik Wongsawan, for the kind introduction. My topic is Reimagine Yourself Beyond 2020. And I'm very fortunate to come after Lisa Yong, because some of the things that she mentioned just now actually flows into what I'm going to talk about. She spoke about see, think, do. She touched on concept ideating as well as experience visualization. And certainly those are the areas which I'll be touching on as well. The COVID-19 pandemic has totally altered the way we look at work, at workers, and the workplace. We are living in a world we had never imagined before, but this is the reality now. And with each passing day, we are finding newer ways to cope up. What made us relevant in the past, to borrow a quote from Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, What made us relevant in the past does not hold today. What got us here may not get us there. So it is all about agile, adaptive, and resilient we can be to prepare ourselves for the future and become future proof. We need to see ourselves differently. And we start by transporting ourselves in our minds to the future. That alludes to something that Lisa mentioned just now. Our mind is a very powerful thing which we tend to take for granted, and we tend to believe we are not in control of what we think because our thoughts are all over the place all day long. But there are times when we find ourselves able to focus and focus hard. And during those rare moments, we are in control of our thoughts, and things more than not happens the way we want them to happen. We've heard of the saying, thought becomes things. We become what we think about. And affirmation helps us focus. So make a habit of proclaiming affirmations daily. Say this every morning we wake up. We are what we think. We become what we think about. We certainly can create the life we want simply by thinking the right thoughts. Earl Nightingale wrote in The Strangest Secret in the late 50s, I think it was 1957, in an attempt to teach people the power of the mind, the power of thought. He said, you become what you think about all day long. And this inspiration actually came from Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. That was a 1938 book where he wrote, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And basically what essentially I'm going to cover after this are thoughts that comes out in his book Think and Grow Rich, as well as his earlier book The Law of Success. Whilst we are saying that we need to reimagine ourselves, that is the what we want to become in the new normal, but how and what to do, how to achieve it, those are actually long secrets which successful people have imbued within themselves. I read this book in my early years, when I was a teenager, and that book, those two books, plus Magic of Thinking Big by Charles Schwab and See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar, has guided me throughout my working life. Now, we use the power of our mind, and we need to start imagining our life the way we want it. Create a picture in our mind and think about that picture steadfastly all day long. Believe in it. Reinforce this picture by designing a vision board. Paste this vision board on your wall or as your screensaver so that you constantly view this throughout the day. You will start making different choices in line with your picture. You will take small steps in the right direction. You also encounter obstacles, but you won't let these obstacles stop you. If you hold the picture of the life you want steadfast in your mind, you will eventually create the life. Now, more about thought become things. The thoughts get transmuted into physical reality. This means that we are constantly creating our own reality through the dominating thoughts which we hold in our minds. If we think success, we will create success. If we think money, we will create money. If we think goal X, we will create goal X. So the first thing to remember, and this is what Lisa mentioned just now about see, right? To be able to see, we must control our thoughts. By controlling our thoughts, we can control our lives. We have 100% control over our thinking, and this means that we have also control over our destiny. We can, through the power of thoughts, create our own reality the way we want it. Yet we can only do that if we start to control our thoughts. The most practical of all methods for controlling the mind is to keep it busy with a definite purpose. Yeah? We all need one major definite purpose that we can focus on. This ensures that we can control our minds by constantly thinking about it. If our desire to achieve this major definite purpose is big enough, this happens almost automatically. We must have a burning desire to accomplish our definite purpose, right? So just now was see, now we have to think. we must have that burning desire. If we truly want to achieve our major purpose, then we will think about it all day long. Then it will become an all-consuming obsession, and then our mind can constantly be controlled by focusing an all-consuming obsession, and then our mind can constantly be controlled by focusing on accomplishing that desire. A big enough desire ensures that we control our mind, that we can control our mind, and therefore our future. I hope I've made this clear by now. The way to control our mind is this: we constantly think about our desire. We constantly think about achieving our major definite purpose. There isn't any space. Don't allow any space left for other thoughts. Once you have a burning desire to achieve one major purpose, it becomes all important. It becomes so important. It becomes very important to develop belief and faith. We must have faith in the achievement of that purpose. Have faith that we will succeed. Now, if you are an athlete, if you're running the marathon, if before the start you say, I'm not going to complete the marathon, chances are by the halfway mark, you will give up. But if you have faith that you will complete, and throughout the run, you just focus on completing, then you will succeed. We must develop the faith or belief that we will accomplish our major purpose. We must believe, that is, have faith that it will happen. Once we know what we want, we must create in ourselves the belief that we can do it, right? So faith is a state of mind that may be induced or created by affirmation or repeated instructions to the subconscious mind through the principle of auto-suggestion. I just ran a half marathon last week, and I had never run more than 15 kilometers before. And by the time I touched 16 kilometers, my body was all gone. But what I did was, I told myself, right, I will complete. When the going is tough, the tough gets going. And I was repeating that every step of the way, the next 6 kilometers. So making repeated affirmations to our subconscious mind is the only known method of developing the emotion of faith voluntarily. We must constantly bombard our minds with affirmations and visualizations that tell it that we can and will achieve our major definite purpose. We must see and feel ourselves as if we already achieved our purpose. This way, over time, we can convince our subconscious mind that we believe in the achievement of our major definite purpose. Now, I will quickly share with you 6 practical steps to transmute desires into physical reality. Sorry, I'm actually sweating here under the lights, and I will just read this through. So, firstly, fix in your mind I'm not just using money as an example here. It could be anything, right? It could be a job, it could be something else, it could be success in some areas. But for this purpose, I'm just using you want a certain amount of money. So fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It's not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money. Be definite as to the amount. Secondly, determine what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. Of course, you won't get anything for free, so you got to give something, right? We won't elaborate on that because of time constraint. Thirdly, establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. Fourth, and I think this is something that Lisa alluded to as well when she was talking about experience visualization, right? Create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are ready or not to put this plan into action, right? And 5, write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire. Name the time limit for its acquisition. State what you intend to give in return for the money, and describe clearly in the plan to which you intend to accumulate it. So the plan has got to be very, very clear. Now, we all know the idea of vision, right? But vision must be accompanied by action, otherwise it's hallucination. So this is exactly what I think Lisa was alluding to just now when she said, see, think, do, right? Do according to plan. And 6, right? You write down all this in a written statement, read the statement aloud a few times a day, and at least once before retiring at night and once after rising in the morning. As you read, see, feel, Lisa said, think, and believe yourself already in possession of the money. So, like I said, it can be anything, it can be money, it can be a job, it can be success, but see, think, do. Thank you, Lisa, for that. I'm going to use this line more often next time. Next, having done that, create a plan to achieve your definite purpose. Why are plans so important? Let's say we want to go from place A to place B by car, where you have a GPS system, which is a plan that is pretty easy, right? You just follow the instructions. Without a map, on the other hand, that is without a plan, you will probably get lost, literally, or at least you will lose a lot of time, energy, and resources that could have been used in a better way. For sure, you will arrive at the location later than if you had a plan. The same principle applies to our goals. Without a clear plan, we waste a lot of unnecessary time, energy, resources. Plus, we achieve the goal, if at all, later than with a clear plan. When we visualize our major definite purpose as already complete, the subconscious mind will hand over the plan to us. Once we believe in the accomplishment of our desired outcomes, our minds will serve as the plans. And one more thing, it doesn't matter if the first plan isn't particularly good. Just get started. Lisa said, do, right? Think about Thomas Edison, for example. He needed over 10,000 attempts to eventually create a functioning light bulb. In other words, he had to make over 10,000 new plans to achieve his goal. Now, that is persistence. Okay, and talking about persistence, persistence is key. Those who have cultivated the habit of persistence is actually having an insurance against failure. No matter how many times they are defeated, they finally arrive up towards the top of the ladder. Sometimes it appears that God wished to test man through all sorts of discouraging experiences. Now, let's talk about a vision board a bit. And here, this is where I'm alluding to Lisa's point about experience visualization. But I'm just using vision board as a tool to help you visualize. And I find this very useful. I have been an insurance CEO in several companies, and we are able to teach school graduates who can't even speak to be $1 million salesmen through the use of visualizing, through the tool of vision boarding. So, why do we need a vision board? Now, according to Psychology Today, mental practices like visualization can increase motivation, confidence, and even motor performance. In fact, in one study, researchers found that in athletes, visualization was almost as effective as physical practice. I'm quite sure the golfers out there can confirm when you putt, you must first visualize the ball going into the hole, right? And it works. Now, vision board is also a fun arts and crafts projects that allows you to see what your goals would look like once you achieve them. And here are some examples. So if, for example, you're hoping to be more comfortable with your body, you might put pictures of happy, healthy men and women coupled with empowering words like confidence on your vision board. So first, consider what matters most to you. When creating a vision board, take a moment of self-reflection and figure out what's most important to you. Think about the one or two segments of your life you really want to change, and focus on those words, focus on those sectors that comes to mind. Then decide if your vision board should represent short-term or long-term change. Using yearly benchmark is almost good, as it's easy to track progress. Then get out your magazines, look through old issues, cut out. If you've gone digital, print those images and put them on the board, on the cardboard. If you want to make improvements to your home, for example, clip a picture of a home, or if you like to take a vacation, find a palm tree, beach, or ski resort. Right? To make your vision board work, put it somewhere you can see clearly. The trick is to make sure any word you use are short and the images you choose are vivid, attractive, and glossy so that your vision board regularly catches your eye. Once you are done, put your vision board in a place that's where you can always see it, because the key is to look at it as often as possible. And don't be afraid to make updates. Though a vision board is a wonderful tool to help you achieve your goals, you can't just sit back and expect it to magically make things a reality. Think of your board as a living thing, rip things off, add things, start from scratch if you're so inclined. So, ladies and gentlemen, from the start, I said what got us here today will not get us there. We need to rethink what the new normal has in store for us, and things will not be the same. But one thing is for sure, we must not only adapt, but we must continue to grow and excel in the new environment. We not only need to grow knowledge, we need to be more intellectual, we need to be more scientific, yet adapt at social sciences. And as such, we need to reimagine ourselves. A vision board certainly helps. So thank you everyone, and I hope I have shared something that you can use and benefit. Once again, good evening.
Thank you so much, Dato Muhib, for sharing your thoughts become things and reimagination beyond the year 2020. Those thoughts are very insightful. So without further delay, I'd like to move us to our Q&A session. We got the question from the audience that for Nikita. Yeah, Dr. Nikita, the question for you is how to reimagine our skills to reinvent ourselves to create work that worth post COVID-19.
Thank you. I really like that this question comes after Dato Muhib because his suggestion of the vision board is very, very helpful to answer this question, actually. I think on one hand, being able to categorize your skills, so what can you do? And on the other hand, what you need to be able to do to get the worth that you want. The gap between these two is what one needs to fill. For instance, if one is a teacher, you think about the fact that with COVID, things have moved online. And so the skills that are needed to be able to teach are not just being able to do research and being able to impact knowledge, but also being able to use the digital space to do this kind of impacting, which means new digital skills, new technological skills that one needs to have. What is interesting here for me is to know that not just what can technology do for you, but like Lisa said, what can you do for it? Where is the people or the person in technology? Where do we see the people in this? And for me, this is very interesting because in looking at this gap between what can you do and what do you need to do, one needs to be able to look at themselves with new eyes. Like she used the word new eyes, which I really like. In thinking in a new way about what you can do and what you need to add up to yourself in order to do the new things. And so with my example of teaching, for instance, if you like to draw, for instance, how does one then use this, or how does one look at this in a new eye, with new eyes, in order to add this up to the digital space? This is very useful for us to look at ourselves differently because we often get stuck in looking at ourselves in one way. So we say, I know how to do research and this is it. But just with research, this means that you know how to talk to people to get answers. You know how to look for things that you need to look for. You know how to impact knowledge to other people because you don't just do research, you also impact this to other people. It means you also know how to design questions for other people. So if we start to look at ourselves with new eyes, we're able to realize that we actually have more skills than we think, and we have more skills than we know we have. But how are we going to be able to look at the gap between that and what we need to do? And I think this vision board is really perfect for this because the vision board helps you to really visualize and to see the different aspects of yourself and where you want to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nikita. We have one more question for Dato Mohib. Dato, how to deal with negative thoughts during the visioning process? This is the question from the floor. Yes. Do you hear my question? The participants asked how to deal with negative thoughts during the visioning process.
Wow, that's a heavy one. If you have read the book The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, is it? And also in Napoleon Hill's book, Secret Number 5 on imagining. One of the things that he said is that we train our mind, right, to think of the beautiful thoughts, right? Once something negative comes in, once something that's going to pain and hurt us, we got to switch off, change our operating system, and think of the good ones. I take, for example, my run again. Basically, I am 67 years old. I have gone through 2 bypass, and nobody will expect me to be running long distance. Certainly, for me, it is quite hazardous in running anything long. So whenever I have this feeling that I've got to stop, which is negative, right? Then I think of a good thought. I plant a good thought in my mind, that is the satisfaction of completing it, the pleasure of completing it, what is waiting at the end of the day. So it is something that you need to force. You need to eject that negative thought out by replacing it with something good. Easier said than done, but it comes with practice. But certainly, I'll be very happy to share more if we have a chance to do a video call. Maybe Lisa, your experience visualization. Would you like to share? I would like to learn something from you too.
To answer the same question, you mean?
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to be depressed these days. That's for sure. I think the beauty of the process that you also described, the vision boards. In our world, we call it the mood boards.
Yes.
It's really to inspire, and project optimism in the what could be instead of what could have been. So I think if that is the attitude that you bring to a project or to how you want to process change, I think it's really like, okay, right now it's really bad, but if you had a chance to make a do-over, what would you do? So use that as a stepping stone to have that dialogue with yourself.
Okay. Good point. If I can add, Lisa's last word just now was have a dialogue with yourself. Now,
Yes.
my own experience before I underwent my second triple bypass, I was really, really scared. People go for bypass, but to go for a second time, it scares you, right? So I was worried that I would have negative thoughts. And I believe that negative thoughts will attract negative results. So I said to myself, how am I going to plant positive thoughts? So what I did was I had my children write out positive affirmations for me. And I pasted it all on the wall, on the 3 walls of my room. So that everywhere I look, I will have positive affirmation. Things like, my body will heal. Every day as I breathe, I am aware that that divinity is helping me get better. Right? In 30 days, I am going to be able to walk 3 kilometers, and I will make sure that I do it, that I walk on a daily basis. So things like that, right? So if you think you are going into something that's going to have negative thoughts, affirmations, brainwash yourself.
Okay, so my last question for Lisa. What are the main obstacles that prevent us from designing outside the box? And what can we do about them?
I think the obstacle most of the time, echo. The obstacle most of the time is really not believing, right, of the possibilities. I think a lot of companies that we've dealt with, the most difficult ones are usually the ones that think that they already know everything, or they perceive that I'm in the business, I know my business, you can't tell me more. But it's a lot of navel gazing. It's a term that you hear a lot in the Silicon Valley. It's really like, okay, looking down but not looking forward. So because of that, that becomes a stumbling block even before you start to have creative thinking. So I think it's really about being open-minded. First is really to allow yourself to be open-minded to other possibilities beyond what you think you know. Because I think in our life as human beings is really about educating yourself as long as you live, and be curious, which is why we come back to being curious. If you're not curious, then there's no purpose, in terms of, what you can learn from other people. So I think it's that disbelief that is the stumbling block for a lot of people, blocking themselves off, not being perceptive or receptive to change. I think that also manifests in itself right now in the pandemic, right? In a lot of strange behaviors that come out of this crisis is this disbelief this can happen to us. But instead of disbelief, it's like, okay, flip it around. What can you do about it that will create positive change? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, as the moderator of the session, I hope our participants have gained some insights and key takeaways from our Reinvent and Reimagine session to bring to apply in your personal and professional lives, especially during this tough time of the COVID-19. I'd like to thank all the speakers and every participant for making our session a productive one. With this, I'd like to end our session with a quote from Neil Donald Walsh. He is an American author of the book series Conversations with God that says, "Life begins at the end of our comfort zone. Life begins at the end of our comfort zone. So let's reinvent and reimagine ourselves." Over to Eric.
Thank you very much, Kun Atip. Well, thank you very much to our three distinguished speakers and also our distinguished moderator. The next session is ready to start, so I will end this session now. Have a good day. Don't go so soon. Stay with us, and we'll see you at the next sessions. All right. Bye.